Thanks. So let's move now to the last panel, and we are not too bad on time, so I think we'll finish as scheduled. And this panel, it could not be different. It's an invitation for a few people that have had a close history with Claf to reflect on what they think would be the role of Claf today in this context that we have heard from the various speakers that we had. So I would like to invite Silvina Ponce as president of IUPAP as a very appropriate person to lead this panel. Thank you very much, Silvina.
Thank you, Ulises. Okay, so...
And of course, we have a missing panelist, which is Ricardo Galvão could not be here today, yes.
But it still is 10 minutes each?
Well, yes, I would say
Should I be strict? So yeah, maybe because then we can facilitate the discussion. Okay, so we will have 10 minutes each. I will let you know when you are 2 minutes away from your timing. So the first speaker is Luis Huerta Torquio from the Chile Nuclear Energy Commission, and who is a former director of Claf. Luis.
Thank you, Silvina. I think the panel we had just now, the previous panel, is very important for these reflections on the role of Claf. The large infrastructures existing in our continent. Claf could have, and actually it had a role in this, on one of these future infrastructure. For instance, of course, SWGO is one of the successful projects. But perhaps what I have to say before everything is that the role of Claf is being defined in the sense of this meeting. To shorten the distance between Claf and government decision takers. My experience as Claf director showed me, on one hand, how the Latin American physics community thinks about Claf. Claf is remembered as a source of funding schools and workshops in the countries of the region, and it is required to do that. The point here is that in several countries nowadays in the region, bilateral relationships with large or advanced scientific centers are now more easily established than before. So what is the role of Claf in this concept of multilateralism? In this world where multilateralism is in crisis. One point that is very important to point out is that not all our countries in the region have achieved the development that permits them to negotiate alone those agreements or access to large scientific facilities. Therefore, the original mission 60 years ago of Claf remains as a priority for the countries that have not achieved the development to be alone in some sense. No one must to be alone in this endeavor, of course. But now there are new challenges due precisely to the development achieved in the more advanced countries in the region. I think in some sense this is a new era for Claf. The original mission, as I said, remains to have in mind the progress of physics in all our countries. But also, this means in general, not only for the countries less advanced, that Claf has the mission to create opportunities for researchers to work here in Latin America. Claf to be an actor of science diplomacy. This means that it should sit at the table where treaties on regional cooperation are discussed. I mean, the seat in the intergovernmental meetings. In those meetings where ambassadors in the morning talked about must include scientific issues, and Claf has an important role in that in Latin America. Claf has been productive at connecting physicists. Our future challenge is connecting ministries. Claf must evolve into an advisory body that helps our member states negotiate complex multilateral agreements for computing grids, synchrotrons, or space cooperation, or everything we have listened today. Actually, nothing of what we have seen today is unrelated to Claf mission. Then these infrastructures created in our region means that this big science is here. So maybe we can say that the future role of Claf must be to act as a consortium manager, I don't know, negotiating block access to major facilities, etc. But also, Claf is very important in forming in human capital, advanced human capital, new researchers. So it's very important to promote, to strengthen our graduate programs. But in this ambience, in this context of cooperation, regional graduate programs, where our students, the future scientists, could travel from one country to another one for getting the knowledge they need to be a researcher. So maybe we have to promote this a regional graduate program in the sense that is thought today. 2 minutes? Okay. The other point is that we leave when we are in charge of Claf is funds for fulfilling the mission. This is an important issue for Claf. Claf must modernize it, maybe in order to allow for public-private partnerships and endowments, ensuring that we have the agility to fund rapid response research grants for promoting our progress. Another point I would like to raise is that is the connection, is part of the mission of the Claf to put physics and physical science for productive issues, for the development of our countries, economical and social development. This is related to interdisciplinary research, the prevalence of a multidisciplinary approach. So we need to put more effort in that, maybe, to show our governments that physics significantly contributes to GDP of our countries. There are other things we could, I think what we have today is a brainstorming, but well-founded. What we have listened is the evidence in the region to make Claf more important for the community, but especially for the countries. Claf legacy is strong. I think to honor that legacy are mandated not to repeat the past 60 years of its history, of our history. We must build a Claf that is an active diplomatic engine for the integration of Latin America. I very convinced that this new era is beginning. I especially acknowledge the efforts of Ulises in this. I think this meeting is a sample of these efforts and the commitment to advance to a new era for Claf. I think Claf has a role. One part is the old mission, but the other part is a mission more complex, related to infrastructure, to create opportunities from large laboratories installed in Latin America. Thank you.
So now we have Alberto Baru from the National Scientific and Technical Research Council of Argentina, CONICET.
Thank you, Silvina. And thank you, Ulises, for the invitation and for organizing this great seminar. I think it's an excellent restart of Claf. So I will read, so I will stay on time. And for me, it's an honor and a great responsibility to be here today on this panel of Claf, an institution with a track record of more than 60 years that has been a fundamental actor in the dream of building an integrated, sovereign, and vibrant physics community in our region. Let us remember that Claf was born from a spirit of cooperation at a time when science was seen as an engine for development and autonomy. From the beginning, Argentina has been a pillar of this forum, contributing not only with our best physicists, but also with a profoundly humanistic vision of science, understanding that knowledge is a public good and a right. I would like to talk about the challenges and opportunities that define our work as scientists today. I will do my best to offer a vision infused with some hope, because physics, after all, is a science of complex problems and elegant solutions. The state of science in Latin America is paradoxical. We have islands of international excellence in high energy physics, astronomy, theoretical physics, nanoscience, and medical physics, for example, that coexist with a notion of institutional instability. Science and technology budgets in most countries of the region are at best erratic, at worst merely symbolic. We remain heavily dependent on the political will of the current governments, with few examples of long-term state policies. The private sector, with a few honorable exceptions, still regards research and development with suspicion, which hinders processes of technology transfer and joint development. The creation of technology-based startups is marked by funding rounds that far exceed the investment capacities of our countries, meaning that they often end up thriving in central nations under more favorable and shady fiscal regimes. In this landscape, it is crucial that we have clarity about the role of basic research in the development of our science, technology, and innovation systems. As the founder of CONICET, Bernardo Hussey, once said, there is no applied science without science to apply. While we fight for the resources, the global science system is undergoing its own convulsions. We are trapped in a self-inflicted system of bibliometric and quantitative scientific evaluation. Concepts like impact factor, H index, and individual prominence reign supreme, undermining collaborative, high quality, and highly complex scientific production. We judge papers by the name of the journal where they are published, not by their quality, nor by their contribution to the development of our fields. This is aggravated by the open access APC model adopted by major publishers, which require paying large sums to publish the science that we ourselves fund, produce, and peer review. A model that is worth remembered was created by predatory publishers some years ago that now are hard to distinguish from the so-called serious editorial houses. The combination of quantitative evaluation and pay to publish has given rise to the aberration of paper mills and the proliferation of retracted papers in all sorts of journals. I wonder if it isn't time to think about decisively supporting our own publication outlets with models that respect the quality of what is published and the copyright of those who created the content. For this, we must add the worrying advance of anti-scientific stances, which range from climate change denialism to vaccine skepticism, eroding the epistemic authority of science and hindering dialogue with our societies. Our challenge is twofold: to produce the knowledge and at the same time to defend its value. Into this state of affairs, we got artificial intelligence. Its impact on scientific production is already a revolution. It allows for accelerating computational simulations, analyzing large volumes of data, reviewing code, and even drafting manuscripts. AI is a powerful tool that forces us to redefine creativity and authorship. I wonder, are we training physicists who know how to work with these systems, or merely technicians who operate them? Human resource training in sciences and raising the interest of young people in physics are both a present problem and our greatest hope. Young people arrive with enthusiasm, but crash into a bottleneck: meager scholarships, precarious career paths, and the almost natural option of developing their work in central countries. We need to align incentives with expectations. As happens time and again in our discipline, we must not develop science for our young people, but alongside them. Today, we live in a complex multipolar world. There is no longer a single hegemonic center of science. This opens a historic opportunity for regional cooperation. Claf is a living example of this chance. We can weave stronger regional alliances, create shared infrastructure, mobility programs between our countries, and our own evaluation standards, fairer and more contextualized. So what is the state of physics in Latin America? It is a vibrant field, as we saw today, with a talented and strong community, but one that often operates with one hand tied behind its back. The role of governments must evolve from being more mere funders, when they are, to being architects of ecosystems. They should create fiscal policies to stimulate private investment, promote a smart public sector that demands local innovation, and keep a clear commitment to measure international collaborations where we contribute with intellect, not only with just data. We need to move from working in a reactive and dependent scientific environment to building a proactive and strategical sciences. Claf should be a vehicle for helping government officials understand the value and the need for basic research. Claf should help our physicists not only to contribute to the global mainstream, but also to ask the questions relevant to our region: clean energy, materials for industry, technologies for public health, climate modeling of our ecosystems. To conclude, I return to the spirit of Claf and the historical stance of Argentina. Science is an act of intellectual sovereignty and fraternal cooperation. In a world of cold metrics and distrust, our greatest assets are the passion for understanding the universe and the conviction that this knowledge must serve to build a more just, developed, and free Latin America. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Now the next speaker is Carlos Alberto Aragón from the Funding Authority Studies and Project, FINEP.
And former director of Claf.
Also.
Yeah, I guess then I have to introduce myself. I am a retired professor of physics of the Federal University of Rio. As Ulises just said, former director of Claf from 94 to 97. Thanks to Jambiagi, who was my predecessor, who said that I should be director of Claf because I was the only Brazilian who could speak Porteño. And currently I am the director of science and technology at FINEP. FINEP is one of the two funding agencies of the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. The other one is our host, our National Research Council, which was founded in 1951 and deals with people, with researchers. FINEP, on the other hand, deals with institutions, whether they are institutions of science and technology or companies. So we support these institutions with funds, essentially or mainly 97% coming from what we call the National Fund for Scientific and Technological Development, which FINEP is then the executive secretariat. In other words, it's the institution that pours the money into the scientific community and the businesses that are technologically based in our country. Our main source of investment, which is the main source of investment of the ministry, is in fact this fund. And in this government, this fund has passed through a almost revolution. Thanks to a law which was passed in 2021, which transformed the fund into a financial fund and forbade our economists from keeping us from spending the money, something that in Brazil we call contingenciamento. It's a very nice word that means you have the budget, but you can't spend it. Now, this law, which was passed in 2021, was not respected by the previous government. And then when President Lula came to power, he, first of all, named the first woman Minister of Science and Technology, Luciana Santos. And they, of course, not only respected the law, but provided the means for us to really be able to deal with the full budget that was allotted to the ministry. To give you an idea in numbers, that meant that, for example, in 2023, we had almost 10 billion reais, which is roughly $1.9 billion. Half of that for grants, half of that for loans, because we make loans to companies. The next year went up to 2.4 billion, and this year 2.8, and next year we'll have a 20% increase. So that gives you an idea of the significance of respecting the law. Well, to make a long story short, once we started having these funds, we had to somehow meet the challenge that was proposed by our minister, which was, there are 4 challenges, in fact, 4 axes. The first was to reconstruct, consolidate, expand, and integrate our national system of science and technology and innovation, which is the set of universities, research centers, technological institutes, as well as companies. The second, innovation in industry, which was already mentioned by my Chilean colleague. The third, strategic national programs, such as Sirius and Orion in Campinas. We also have in São José dos Campos, the CBERS project, which is a Chinese-Brazilian satellite program, which is now in its 6th version. And of course, one which will interest Karina, which is the multipurpose reactor, which is similar to RA-10 that she mentioned, she described in her talk. Now, these challenges led us, the governance of this fund, to propose initially 10 programs. The idea was not to pulverize resources, but rather to concentrate them in major programs. To give you an idea, for example, program number 1, which is the infrastructure program. It's thanks to this program that Claf is going to have a new house, right? The one which I lived in was a danger, because we were always afraid that the ceiling would fall. Nowadays, we're hoping that probably by next year or a year and a half, we'll have a new headquarters for Claf together with the museum and so on. It's also this program that supports our universities and all the infrastructure which is needed. Program number 2, which is the one that's designed for companies, is one that supports innovation through grants, and it also involves credit, so loans. There's a program number 8, for example. I know them by heart because, of course, we've been working on this since 2023. Program number 8 is the one that supports all these major programs that I mentioned. And this year, we added 2 more programs. One, artificial intelligence, and the number 12, which is to deal with climate disasters, which have plagued not only us, but many other countries in our region. Now, those programs, of course, try to irrigate with funding a system which is already quite robust, but faces enormous challenges. So we just had as I think Matsumoto mentioned, that yesterday I was at the palace, and President Lula was conducting a meeting of the Council of Science and Technology, National Council of Science and Technology. And then we handed him the National Strategy for Science, Technology, and Innovation from 2024 to 2034. And the president received that. He was in good humor. He was about 4 hours late, but then when he came in, he distributed candy for all the people, the members of the council, which somehow managed to keep things calm. But anyway, so this strategy, it is aimed at making our country a country which is just. So we have to deal with all the inequalities. A country which is supposed to be developed, but in a sustainable way, which means economically, socially, and environmentally. And a country which is supposed to be sovereign. And the concept of technological sovereignty is really quite current and extremely important. So we have to look at health. The epidemic showed us how vulnerable we are. Defense, because we're always facing curbs to imports and so on, which are needed for our defense. Brazil, for example, has a nuclear program in the Navy. It's nuclear for propulsion. Our constitution forbids us to have nuclear weapons. But this program, for example, faces enormous challenges because nobody will export certain nuclear class materials, for example. But other things like artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, bioeconomy, we have to develop a bioeconomy, not only us, but many countries that share the Amazon biome have also this big challenge before them, energy transition and so on and so forth. So how does Claf fit into this? I think that Claf is what us particle physicists call, it's supposed to be an intermediate boson, right?
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes, that's all I need.
Okay.
It's an intermediate boson because what it can do, and it's in its tradition, but which somehow has to be modernized, is to, first of all, bring the community together with meetings, conferences, and so on, having people come together and participate in joint activities where all the important information that we are sharing today. I've been here since morning, right? And I've learned a lot of things. And so our community has to learn that there is a Sirius there, Orion is coming, that you have RA10 in Argentina and so on. So this is one important mission, which is to somehow bring the community together and use our modern methods of communication to get the information to people. A second thing that we have to do is to stimulate and promote, in the measure of our possibilities, scientific collaboration. Yeah? And this can be done in various ways. One of them is, of course, providing information, getting the people to talk to each other and to propose joint products. In each of the programs that we have, for example, in our national fund, there's one line of action, which is international cooperation. So if a group in Argentina finds its partner here in Brazil, the Brazilian group can, of course, apply to this fund and have support for projects. So this is a very important initiative, and it's all the 12 programs contemplate this idea of supporting international cooperation. A third thing, which is very important, we must not forget, capacity building, looking at the less developed countries in the region. We have countries like Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, with Uruguay, who have that have already an important level of expertise in physics, for example, and in many other sciences. So we have to use this and bring the people from the less developed countries to get their training. And of course, this is very important because once you get your training in another country, the ties are there and they never end. And finally, the last thing, and I'll finish here before Silvina starts to hit me, scientific diplomacy. We mustn't forget that Claf is an international organization, and therefore it has all the legitimacy to go to governments in the region and try to influence them, telling them that supporting science, technology, and innovation is a crucial element if they have hopes of actually achieving progress, achieving the well-being of their populations, and that the question of sovereignty is a must. all our countries must be, centered, focused on this, because nowadays technological sovereignty is a must. The epidemics, the pandemics, whatever, showed us this. There are many other examples. Climate disasters, another important example of how we have to somehow develop our own means to face these big challenges. And of course, as the Beatles would have said, always with a little help from my friends, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you. So last but not least, Guillermo Anjo from the UNESCO.
Thank you, Silvina, and thank you for the ibuprofen. I supposed to share with you some initiative, but I prefer now to share some feelings and some thoughts, and then if they are realized, sometimes I can make a little advice. It's the end of the session, and we can look to the empty part of the glass or to the full part of the glass. My friends know that I only take attention for the empty, so I'm going to try to do it for the full one. Right. 60 years ago, we lack of a lot of things in terms of science in general, but in physics. So not only because of Claf, but now we have a lot of things. We can say we have facilities, we have human resources, we have this possibility to have many countries of the region on the table discussing this. For me, was amazed when I was hearing the last panel. It was like an open example of many of the things that UNESCO was trying to say in terms of science diplomacy and in terms of open science. I know that you don't realize it because you are not thinking on these issues, but I was thinking, he's mentioning something on open access. He's discussing open data. That's an example of sharing big infrastructures. And we can build an open agenda, not an agenda that depends on one researcher alone. So I think that's the agenda for Claf. How to share data, how to share in the region big infrastructure, how to this making happens. That's the challenge. I can put there the slide of open science recommendation, and you can going to see the titles. But the issue is not only the title, is how to do it. And that's the big challenge also for UNESCO. So that's why UNESCO is trying to gather good practices and examples and trying to reunite things around the world. But I think Claf has the opportunity in a field well-defined with big facilities, the region having the facilities and defining, we have those, but we lack of this. Who is going to take care of that? All alone, or we can make an effort together. And I think there is huge possibilities, huge chances to do that. How we are going to deal with open data? Who is going to produce the data? Who is going to use? Who is going to put the data online? There is a possibility. There is a huge chance, and Claf could make being this honest broker in terms of physics data for Latin American countries. How to set up new, Claf knows how to capacity building human resources. But now we need new skills. So maybe there's an opportunity also. Which is going to be the science diplomacy strategy of Claf? Not of Brazil or Argentina or Uruguay, of Claf. Claf has an opportunity to set up a strategy on science diplomacy. That was my reactions when I was hearing there is an opportunity to put in action many of UNESCO's agenda topics and transform these topics in reality. That's I am open to help you, Ulises, because I know everyone is around the table, but Ulises is going to be the man in charge to say, move it. but I think that there's a huge opportunity to try to do it, because at the same time, I was hearing you, well, we have to do it. And I was asking why we are not doing it. We are here. And you are not saying, you are the people in charge in your countries of these issues. What we need to move? Maybe this space could be the space to solve it. And I hope it. And a very short advice.
You haven't reached the 2
Yes, I
minute
know, but-
warning.
I don't know if you know it, but since almost a decade behind, UNESCO promoting the region. It's not an UNESCO space or initiative. It's an initiative of UNESCO, but open to the region. And now it's an initiative that gather, I say, almost all the regional institutions that are involved in science and technology policy. That are the ELBIT, International Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, the OAE, CEGIV, ECLAC, UNESCO, and Universidades del Grupo Montevideo, Asociación de Universidades del Grupo Montevideo. And it's Science Open Forum. What means that? It's an open forum. It's not a workshop. It's not a congress. It's not a summit. It looks to gather every stakeholders related to science policy, mainly in the region, to share ideas, to discuss about what we need to do to improve, to push science in the region. We, from UNESCO, we are in charge of the executive secretary. We produce a lot of material in order to the decision takers have on their hands tools to not start from zero. And as Matsumoto shared with us, we are in negotiations with Brazil to have the next edition in Brazil next year. Maybe there is opportunity to set up as one of the main themes of the next forum, physics, or part of the physics, in order to highlight the relevance of physics for this region, and not to keep in think that physics is so hard that belongs to the developed countries only, that it's a necessity for our countries. But that's the little.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Guillermo.
Okay.
So I will pose a little bit of a provocation now, because many of you talked about interdiscipline, talked about bioeconomy, handling what happens after a climate disaster, lots of things that are not directly related to physics. Plus, or physics is part of, but it's not the only discipline that participates in trying to solve those problems. Plus, when Claf was created, physics was like the queen of sciences, which in entering the 21st century, it seemed that biology would take that position. And so my provocative question is, how can we convince that still we need a separate physics organization, separate from other disciplines, and why physics is important, and why governments should put specific funding for physics? I don't know who wants to say something. Carlos.
That's an easy question. Artificial intelligence, for example, there was a physicist involved, right? There's even a Nobel Prize in physics with John Hopfield. When you talk about quantum technologies, you know, quantum computers, quantum information, sensors, detectors, and so on, they are again physics. If you talk about bioeconomy, the methods of physics are used extensively. And for example, José Roque has a beautiful machine there, which is used, one of the laboratories in the National Center for Research in Energy and Materials is the National Biosciences Lab, which uses the synchrotron. And we're now talking about Orion, which is a new machine, right? Which will deal with viruses and so on by using lines of our synchrotron. So physics is everywhere in climate change, in artificial intelligence, in the energy transition, so on and so forth. So it's not that you shouldn't have other entities. For example, in Brazil, you have the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science, but that gathers all the other societies. We have the Brazilian Physics Society, have the Brazilian Chemistry Society, and so on and so forth. So I think that physics plays a major role, will always play a major role in any one of these big challenges. And so having an organization which is international and whose main objective is to somehow galvanize, integrate, put together all the good physics centers in the region, that's obviously something that we should pursue. And it is our mission, as was mentioned by our friend at UNESCO, to somehow impact the various governments about the importance of supporting Claf initiatives or providing Claf with the means it needs to, for example, have capacity programs for the less developed countries in the region. We somehow have been doing this, but we could improve tremendously. It's not that we're not doing all the things that we're saying that we should do, but we should. What we have to do is to somehow make our dynamics more accelerate, and use this instrument, which is extremely important. We have an international organization. How many international organizations do you have? We have one for physics, and for physics in Latin America. So let's use the punch that this could potentially have. One of the things that we're celebrating today is another agreement between Claf and the National Research Council. I had my Claf hat at many years ago. I'm former many things. I'm also former president of this house of National Research Council. And we signed things back then. We somehow should try now to stabilize this support, find other means of support, but at the same time, modernize our methods. Right? We're living in a world of instant communication, so we have, of course, the conferences, presidential conferences where people come and participate are extremely important. But that doesn't mean that we cannot improve our digital communication and have it as an important instrument in sharing information and provoking people and so on and so forth. So I'm quite confident, Silvina, that Claf is it's an organization that has enormous potential in present conditions, and we should,
Oh, no, you wouldn't expand it to embrace other
I don't think we need to. There are other organizations that deal with chemistry or biology or whatnot. We should stick to physics and fight to convince people that whatever they do, physics will always be there. I learned from an economist. I did not learn. I refused to learn. He told me, no more physics. You know, this century is a century of biology and so on and so forth. You physicists, you talk too much. You try to, interfere too much and so on and so forth. That was in 2023, and the government started. 1 year later, we were talking about artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and so on. So I haven't met him yet, but I want to, meet him and tell him, what about, your prediction?
Guillermo.
I-
Oh,
Can I add something?
yes,
Silvina?
sure, sure. I was not seeing you.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
The first.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh,
sorry?
oh, I didn't know it
Who
was
is-
Fernando. I didn't know you
Yes.
were connected.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, sorry. Well, first of all, congratulations to everybody who has been speaking. It has been very, very good session. It's past midnight here, but I'm enjoying it very much. So just to say that I fully agree with my good friend Carlos about this point about supporting Claf. Actually, I like to say that at some point that this may be a century of biology, but not necessarily a century of biologists. So that means that physicists have a lot to say about that, and I think Silvina is a good example. But I think it's to be pragmatic. I mean, Claf exists, so we have to support it and try to make the most out of it. That's one thing. So now that I had agreed with Carlos, I had a question for Carlos also. For all of you, essentially, from my experience with Claf, essentially, the main problem that Claf has is funding. And so they can play an important role, as you have stated that, but attracting funding, I think, if I'm right, only the Brazilian government has been contributing, or mostly the Brazilian government. I saw it in a very positive way that there were several ambassadors coming earlier in the morning. So it looks that there is already access to them, and then that is a way of trying to convince other countries to contribute more. But so that I think will be a challenge for Luis, I guess, and I think has been a challenge for Luis and Carlos and everybody who had been directors. But now from the big funds that you mentioned, Carlos, can there be some extra contribution to Claf directly, or from some I don't know, fellowship programs or something that Claf can implement?
Thank you for the question, Fernando. He asked if you can give some money to Claf.
I get from all that money that you made investing and applying the law correctly.
Let me say something. First, to emphasize what Carlos said, and also Fernando. First, Claf does exist, and it exists after 60 years. And I remember looking for another intergovernmental organization in Latin America in science. We don't find it. The ambassador in the morning mentioned Flaxo. Do you know about Flaxo for social sciences? Flaxo is an intergovernmental organization for Latin America. The other one is Claf. So I think Claf has shown that has a potential because it remains. Today is difficult. Funding is a problem. Ulises knows about that, and that is one of the problems he has to tackle. And then also emphasize that physics, of course, is everywhere. And it is very important. I think we welcome that Sirius is used by biologists. Molecular biologists are using the most of the facility. That means that we have to look for biologists to form an organization for Latin America? No, we don't. We don't. We must not do that. So the question is, do we need Claf? And I think this meeting, these reflections are not possible, are not if Claf is not invited to people to do these reflections. I know that every infrastructure, every installation, every university, every group of scientists can think about cooperation, the way to improve their indicators in their productivity, their relationships, but in the small part of their needs, their concerns. Claf is concerned about all the possibilities and benefits that physics could give to the continent for physical science, for biology, for chemistry, etc. And Claf has remained doing that in spite of the funding problems.
So I'm sorry, but we reached the time that we were supposed to end the meeting, and I have two more people. I don't know if you want to wrap up, Luis, or you're okay with what you already said. Are you okay?
It's okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I have Guillermo and Alberto, and I don't know if Carlo wants to say something about funding. And then maybe we can.
I'm going to try to be short.
Yes, please.
First, the first question is yes, absolutely yes. There is needed for these specific field institutions, but with two warnings. One is open to dialogue with other, and the other one is, from my point of view, not UNESCO, Guillermo. I recommend you to not go to government saying physics is important, so give me money. It's more relevant going with what problem do you have? We can help you. Try to feel government, in what field you are having problems? Artificial intelligence. Well, we can do that and that. It's the other. It's a switch, but it's necessary, because scientists used to go to knock the door asking money because science is important, and that's not working. And one little
advice.
No, little warning. I know that the physicists thought that they are the main science. Try not to put it when they talk with another scientist.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Alberto.
Well, I wouldn't be as arrogant to say that biology is a nice part of physics, but we are, in this context, I think the joke is okay. No, I think that what Luis said is right. We are everywhere, but not only working with biologists on chemistry or engineering, but also we find physicists working in economy or social science. So perhaps I think the answer is that we have the tools for working with complexity. And the problem you mentioned, like climate change or very difficult social problems, have this component of very high complexity. Yesterday we were talking with Omar, and we said we understand how to deal with chaos, with very difficult problems, with very complex systems. And probably this is our main contribution right now to science. I think that we have to establish very good a very good dialogue with other parts of science, but physics remains to be very important and very necessary to develop.
Thank you. Carlos, I don't know if you want to say.
Yeah, first of all, I think that this discussion, we've overcome it many years ago. I mean, we all know that given the complexity of the problems that we have to face, we need physicists, chemists, biologists, statisticians, computer scientists, and so on and so forth. So that's, to me, quite obvious. I don't think that we can deal with the complexity of present-day problems by just thinking that one discipline will do it. And I completely agree that we should approach governments and so on by saying, we are physicists, we can help you, just as the biologists or the chemists and the mathematicians. I mustn't forget mathematician, I'm the son of a mathematician, right? And that's the right way to approach. But in all I've said about our national strategy, for example, in Brazil, I was one of the members of the group that actually had to write this up and present it to the president. We never had any worry about specifying which field. We thought about problems and how to solve these problems, which were the major challenges that we faced, and which were the ones that represented almost vital challenges. So this is probably the correct approach. As far as the financing, for example, this fund that we have in Brazil, it's a fund which is for projects. We cannot finance an organization, okay? We finance projects that come from various organizations. Now, Claf derives its resources from contributions of the member countries. Of course, these contributions would more and more important as you know, if Claf can convince the countries that what it does is important. And so its role as a sort of an intermediate boson, as I said, is quite essential. And you have to convince the governments that this is an important role, that you can do it better than anybody else, because it's an institution that has a history, has the experience, and so on and so forth. So on the other hand, if Claf does its job, it will show the way to access funds in the various funding opportunities that you have in our countries, in Argentina, in Mexico, here in Brazil, through international cooperation based on specific projects. I'll give you an example. Dune, which was mentioned in the previous, one of the previous presentations. Dune is this deep underground neutrino experiment. It's a collaboration with Fermilab, and it involves many, many countries. Well, Brazil is funding this in an indirect way, since the Brazilians have built the detector, which is going to be used, as well as the liquid argon, gadget that they have to use. Yes, that's it. Right. So we found a way to support that by funding the companies that are going to make these detectors. So we have to find intelligent ways. Ulysses has a similar problem. We have to find a similar way. And in fact, we're supporting this through program number 2, which is the one for innovation in companies. So the funding exists. Even if Claf does not have those fundings directly, it can be a very useful instrument in finding ways to get them. Okay, so this is what I had to say to this provocation.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. So I leave the floor to Ulises.